Welcome to this week's Credent Connect series. And now that we're roughly a little over 50% through the first quarter here in 2024, it bears significance to kind of review market activity thus far, given that we have received some GDP data from the fourth quarter of last year. We have received tremendous earnings data, and we've also seen tremendous economic data releases. And on that front, one of the reasons for today's Credent Connect series on this particular topic, which is essentially economic expectations, one of the things we want to focus on is the anchoring bias that can often occur with economists' data on expected economic data points, or even earnings for that matter. And the severity of it, for lack of a better term, resembles what we saw and experienced during the depths of COVID back in 2020. Now, I don't want to alarm you from a volatility standpoint, but rather from an inability of economists to truly understand the status and stature and forward-looking path of the economy. Alicia, one of the greatest examples we saw actually happen here recently in February. Walk us through one of these examples, the implications it has, and the complete disconnect we often see between economists and reality. That happens all the time.
Sure. So earlier this week, we had the January release of the CPI data. Economists were calling for 2.9% year-over-year headline CPI, came in a little bit higher at 3.1%, and the market was very disappointed by that release. So we saw tremendous downside during that day, and it's because they were anchored to that bias, that 2.9%. Surprisingly, then the next day, what we saw is that the market had time to kind of adjust to that. They realized that disinflationary trend is still intact.
Right.
And we saw sort of a rebound the day following.
Yeah. So as the market digests that data, what we're seeing is this expectation of this number causing volatility. The reality is that we're within a stone's throw of each other that bears no significance to derailing an economic activity. Why this is critically important is because over the past 3 to 4 years or so, the consumer participation in economic surveys has dwindled precipitously lower, okay? So what that means is as economists attempt to derive an overview of the economy or a forward-looking expectation, what we have witnessed in the data set is the number of people responding to surveys has gone lower. As that has occurred, the quality of economist data is actually starting to become poor, right? Weaker data. But that doesn't remove the market's bias in the anchoring of what an economist may say or hope will materialize. Given that we are investment managers, right, and we are prudent investment managers on behalf of our clients, we nonetheless have to rely on some of that data, look at that data, and use it for allocation purposes, analytical research, and so on and so forth. Alicia, how do we take our own approach to that structure? Because we just said some of that data is wrongfully anchored in the market. What is another approach that can help us better analyze that process?
So of course, we pay attention to these economic releases, but one of the things that we do is we actually focus on the trends of the data, not being anchored to the actual expectations.
Yes.
The second thing that we do is when we make asset allocation decisions, we're looking at a lot of different factors. We have our equity scorecard composites, and basically what that means is we're looking at 6, 7, 8, 9 different factors. We're looking at technicals, we're looking at fundamentals. So we're looking at a lot of the data, but we're not anchoring ourselves to those forecasts.
Yeah. And we could get notably more in the weeds on those specific indicators. And for those that are interested, please call your advisor. We can certainly have that conversation with you. But what Alicia is alluding to this is the fact that relying on those estimates solely, right, we can put ourselves in an unnecessary bind, such as the market does, and produces unnecessary volatility. It is our intention to remove that bias, remain objective, and focus on that best long-term allocation to achieve our clients' goals.